Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, Counter Spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into a time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Reed Hadley stars in an episode of Frontier Town Western Adventure, old school style. This episode, entitled Oliver Baldwin, was originally broadcast back on March 13th, 1953.
Frontier Town, the saga of the Roaring West. Frontier Town. El Paso, Cheyenne, Calgary, Tombstone. Frontier Town. Here is the adventurous story of the early West, the tamed and the untamed. From the Pecos to Powder River, Dodge City to Poker Flat. These are the towns they fought to live in and lived to fight for. Teeming crucibles of pioneer freedom. Frontier Town!
Howdy. Chad Remington's the name. Chad Remington from Dos Rios in the Rocky Mountain country, where I'm sort of, well, I guess you'd call me a frontier town lawyer. Strange things happen out on the frontier, and as a result, strange things happen to me. Mighty strange things. But the frontier being what it is, always changing and always moving, and with the people who drift into it and across it, we've got just about as much law as the law allows. To show you what I mean, let's take what seemed to be a pretty cut-and-dried case that was brought to me just a matter of a few weeks ago. And I guess the best way to tell you about it is to tell you what happened, or what I suppose happened before they sent for me. Now, it all took place in the town of Rock Springs, about 50 miles from Dos Rios, and concerned a cattle rancher by the name of Oliver Baldwin and his daughter Dixie.
By criminy, Dixie, you're just wasting your breath arguing with me. I know what I'm doing. And I'm a-telling you that I'm going down to Delahanty's store and tell him off proper.
But, Daddy, maybe you did make a mistake when you wrote that deed out for him. Maybe you just thought you wrote it out for 300 acres. You might have put an extra zero on it without realizing it.
The only mistake I made was in dealing with that unprincipled, no-good varmint in the first place. I know what I wrote in that deed, and it was just 300 acres and not 3,000.
Well, if you're positive he changed the 300 to 3,000, you still shouldn't take the law into your own hands.
Who said anything about taking the law into my own hands? I'm just going down to Delahanty's store and give him 24 hours to change that deed back to 300 acres or suffer the consequences. And while I'm in town, I'm sending a telegram over to Dos Rios to that lawyer over there, Chad Remington.
Well, that's a relief.
Because if Delahanty's going to try any crooked stuff on me, I'm a-getting a lawyer and throwing him and his whole kit and caboodle right smack into jail.
Well, Oliver Baldwin was as good as his word. He hitched a team to his buckboard and drove from the 2-Bar-S into Rock Springs to call on Si Delahanty at the little store Delahanty had recently opened in the town. And while he was on the trail to Rock Springs, Oliver Baldwin was the subject of a conversation Delahanty was having with his assistant, Prod Stevens.
Look, Mr. Delahanty, I know I work for you, but you ain't been in Rock Springs long enough to know about these things. And I'm telling you, Oliver Baldwin is a regular catamount when he gets riled.
You don't say so, Prod. The old gentleman looks so gentle. You'd think butter wouldn't melt in his mouth.
Talk about the devil. Here comes Baldwin now.
Let me handle him. Morning, Oliver.
Don't you go Oliver and me, Delahanty.
No, don't tell me just because you made a perfectly understandable mistake in filling out my deed that you're going to hold it against me.
Delahanty, I know you ain't been out west long enough to understand us, folks, but them smooth city ways yours don't go out here. We got our own way of handling crooks.
Prod, I think you better show the gentleman to the door. And don't be too polite about it.
All right, come on,
You
Mr. Baldwin.
lay a hand
Come
on me
now.
and I'll
You
shoot.
numbskull, let that gun alone. Let go of that gun or...
Mr. Baldwin, you pulled a gun, acted like a complete nitwit, and ruined a $200 mirror. Now get out before I lose my temper completely.
If that gunslinger of yours didn't have my 45, I'd show you. But I'm a-getting a lawyer down here, Delahanty, and when he comes, you'll be lucky if you just end up in jail.
So, he's sending for help, is he? Well, the only kind of help he's going to need is the help of 6 pallbearers. Prod,
Yeah, boss?
get that rifle out of the back room. You and I are riding out on the trail, making sure that Mr. Baldwin never gets back home.
Well, Oliver Baldwin stopped long enough at Rock Springs before heading home to send me a telegram. So, enlisting the company and assistance of Cherokee O'Bannon, the ex-medicine man who now owns the Dos Rios livery stable, we lost no time in setting out for Rock Springs and plowing up the dust to the Two Barres ranch house.
This is quite an establishment Mr. Baldwin has over here, Chad.
Yep, and from all appearances, Oliver Baldwin seems to be one of the few really prosperous ranches.
You suppose he might be able to pay you a sizable fee, counselor?
Well, what do you call a sizable fee? $10 for me and 10 quarts of whiskey for you?
Oh, sizable fee should be $20. Oh, quarts.
Yes.
Oh, I'm Chad Remington, and this is Mr. O'Bannon. Is Mr. Baldwin home?
Come in, won't you? I'm Dixie Baldwin. My father was dry gulched last night.
He was dry gulched? Who was the unprincipled culprit who dared to...
Hold it, Cherokee. This is no time to ask questions. If Miss Dixie feels like talking, she'll tell us all that's necessary to know.
Oh, what is it to tell you? I knew before my father left for town that he'd never come back.
Why do you say that?
Because he went in to see Cy Delahanty with blood in his eye.
Cy Delahanty. Who's he?
Double-crossing, sheep-stealing Jasper who just opened a store in town. Oh, I know I can't prove it, but I'm positive that Delahanty did it.
Why do you say that, miss? Had he threatened your father?
I don't know. But Daddy threatened him plenty. You see, Delahanty moved to Rock Springs from Springfield a few months ago. He opened a store and then started looking around for some ranch land he could buy.
Well, that explains part of your father's telegram about a forged deed.
He sold Delahanty 300 acres. When the deed was filed, it read 3,000.
I see. But you said your father was dry gulched. And if he went into Delahanty's store to threaten him,
Of course. You didn't think Delahanty would do what he did in his own store, do you? With that kind, they just wait.
Shall I open the door for you, Miss Dixie?
Well, yes, if you... Well, I recognize his rig outside. That must be Delahanty at the door now.
Oh, wait a minute, Miss Dixie. I think Cherokee and I had better go into the kitchen while he's here.
You mean you don't want to meet Delahanty?
No, I don't. Not just yet.
Well, you're going to be a fine lot of help, you are.
Now, wait a minute. I only want to... you'd better let him in. I'll explain my reasons to you later. All right, come on, Cherokee.
Good afternoon, Miss Baldwin. May I come in?
Yes, as long as you're here.
I heard about your father.
Not really.
A week ago, I'd have felt sorry for your father and for you. But since he made his attitude very apparent yesterday, I'll just make this a business call. Save myself the trouble of coming to see you again.
Save me the trouble of seeing you again.
Your father told you he sold me only 300 acres, didn't he?
It's all he did sell you.
Fortunately, that part is past argument. When he came in to see me yesterday, he asked me to promise that I wouldn't tell you about this. Here.
Bill of sale for 100 head of cattle.
The bill of sale for 100 head of cattle. You didn't think I was going to buy 3,000 acres of land and raise jackrabbits on it, did you? I bought a ranch from your father. A ranch with cattle on it.
You... Mr. Delahanty, I want to tell you something I'm sure you already know. This is nothing but forgery. You copied my father's signature from the original deed.
How very, very clever of me. Of course, you can prove that statement.
I'm giving you 3 to get out of here.
No sense in reaching for that rifle, young lady. Now that I've told you the facts, I'm going. But I'll be back Monday to take over my 3,000 acres and the cattle along with it. Good day, Miss Baldwin. And don't expect me at your father's funeral.
Mr. Remington!
Ah, there's a fine, high-class gentleman. Miss Dixie, do you believe your father did sell him the cattle?
For $1,100?
I'm forced to agree with the young lady, Chad.
So am I, Cherokee. But that doesn't mean a judge and 12 men on a jury would. Now, the first thing for us to do, if Miss Dixie feels up to it, is to ride into town and call on the sheriff.
Sheriff, you can't really mean that.
Allow that I do, Miss Dixie. Guessing's one thing, proving's another.
And how are you going to prove a thing like forgery when even you admit you couldn't tell if it's your father's signature or not?
Well, if either of you think I'm going to be robbed of my ranch and my stock, you've certainly got another thing coming.
Miss Dixie, the law is the law.
Isn't that consoling? But if that is the law, then maybe I'd better make a few laws of my own.
Now, Dixie, you're not going to get any place acting this way.
And as far as you're concerned, Mr. Remington, remember, I didn't ask you to come down here. And if my father had known as much about you as I do now, I don't think he would have either.
We'll return to the second act of Branding the Badlands, our exciting frontier town adventure, in just a few moments.
March 13th, 1953, Frontier Town on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox.
Are you in bad pain? You know what I mean. Your knees hurt. Your shoulder hurts. Your elbow and back are constantly killing you. And I'm sure you've tried every pain pill or cream available at the drugstore. Am I right? Well, here's something you haven't tried. Pain Magic. Pain Magic is not available at any drugstore. The only place you can get it is by calling the special toll-free number I'm about to give you.
And to make things even better, call right now and find out about our buy one, get one free offer. We're so confident it'll work for you that we offer a free bottle with your purchase. No prescription required.
Call now to learn how you can get Pain Magic and get rid of your pain. Remember, your results may vary.
800-492-8164. 800-492-8164. 800-492-8164. That's 800-492-8164.
Now on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, more of Frontier Town, March 13th, 1953.
And now, Frontier Town.
Well, as I said before, a cut-and-dried case doesn't always turn out to be just that. And not only was it a back-breaking job trying to prove anything on Cy Delahanty, but Dixie Baldwin's sudden attitude of bitterness was making my task no easier. After Dixie's display of temper at the sheriff's office, the O'Bannon and I, somewhat grimly I admit, remounted our horses and rode back to the 2-Bar S Ranch. When we got there, we found that Dixie, having seen us coming, had gone into her bedroom and bolted the door, leaving us with a bit of egg on our faces. Not much to do and a good deal to talk about.
Chad, you know I'm not a man who likes propriety. But I want to go on record as saying Miss Baldwin is perhaps the most pig-headed filly I've ever seen. And one of the most pulchritudinous, I might add. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, fine lot of good her pulchritude is doing us while she's locked up in her room.
And it has certain advantages at that, Chad. For example, since she is not out here to play hostess, I could look through the kitchen cupboards to see if I could locate any refreshments.
Not on your tin type. This is one time you need a clear head.
Counselor, my head is clear as a bell.
Yes, and probably twice as empty.
Of course. It's absolutely twice it. What was that again?
Look, O'Bannon, there's only one thing for us to do. We've got to induce Miss Dixie to come out and listen to reason. And there are no two ways about that.
If I know women, and I do, she's not coming out.
Dixie? Dixie, can you hear me? I want to talk to you.
You're just wasting your breath, my boy.
Doggone it, Dixie. Will you stop acting like a spoiled child and come out here?
I'm certainly not coming out. And if you're even half a gentleman, you'll pack up and clear out of here.
Now, your father telegraphed me to come out here and, well, he needed some help. And if you...
Fine lot of help you are. Unless you mean you want to help Delahanty.
Why, you ungrateful little vixen. Now, you either open that door or someone's going to have to buy you a new one.
You try breaking this door down and you're going to get a load of buckshot.
All right. Now, Cherokee, that excess beef of yours is good for something. Come on, help me bust this door down.
Only too glad to oblige, Counselor.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
2 big, strong men, eh? Well, do you think you're big enough to swallow lead?
Now, you wouldn't dare pull that trigger. Your bluff is just like your temper, all on the surface. And for your information, I'm not leaving Rock Springs yet.
And for your information, I don't care what you do as long as you get out of my house.
Fair enough. That's a bargain. All right, come on, Cherokee. We got a bit of riding to do and fast. We did have a bit of riding to do. We rode back to town and made tracks for Delahanty's general store, where we called on Mr. Delahanty himself in mighty short order.
Yeah, I've heard about you, Remington.
I've heard about you, too, Delahanty.
Well, if I were you, I wouldn't believe all I hear.
Sorry, but what I heard about you, I've got to believe.
A really smart man wouldn't.
You talk as if I came here to make trouble for you. I didn't, so I'm putting all my cards on the table. Oliver Baldwin sent for me. When I got here, he was dead. And in my humble opinion, that daughter of Baldwin's is a double-dyed, self-willed little fool.
Oh? Is she?
Now, after talking to the sheriff, I'm sure of it. Now, look. Baldwin was supposed to pay me $500 for coming here, and it looks as if I'm not going to get it. So I thought maybe I could get part of it by making a deal with you.
A deal, huh? Well, keep talking.
Well, the sheriff says there's no question in his mind that you bought and paid for 100 head of 2 Bar-S cattle. And since you're a merchant and not a cattleman, I'd like to make a deal to round up and brand that cattle for you.
Wish I could believe you, Remington.
Now, why shouldn't you believe me? I own a ranch of my own, and I'm telling you that rounding up and branding takes an expert.
Mm-hmm.
Besides, if O'Bannon and I could do the job for you and collect $100, well, we'll at least have made expenses and not leave Rock Springs total losers.
Good grief, man. What have you got to lose? Besides, you can ride along with us and make sure you're getting what you paid for.
That's right, at that. All right, boys, you can start the roundup and branding tomorrow morning. And Prod and I will be right on hand to watch you.
Dixie, won't you even give me a chance to explain?
Don't you think you've explained enough? You're going to do exactly what my father wanted you down here for. To help Delahanty take possession of 3,000 acres and 100 head of cattle he never paid for.
My dear lady, Chad's got a good reason for doing it. And if he'd only stop to think at the time of the year it is, you'd get some ideas why
If you'd only stop trying to alibi yourselves, maybe we'd all be a lot happier. Let me tell you both this much. I'm going to pay you back someday and show the world what a pair of double-dealing, low-down, backbiting snakes you two really are. Since that's all I have to say to you, you can get out of here now and not show your faces again till it's time for your roundup.
All right, Cherokee. Dab a loop on that yearling and haul it over here to the fire. We're all ready to brand.
Right you are, Chad.
Are you sure this brand design will be all right for you, Mr. Delahanty?
Sure, if you say so. It's easy to put on those steers.
Oh, it's very little trouble. And the design, a triangle cross, is unusual. You won't find it twice within 1,000 miles of here.
Chad, this adolescent bovine is not taking too kindly to the idea of branding. Now, who's going to hold and who's going to brand?
I'd better ear the calf down, Cherokee. You look almost worn out already.
The only reason I look worn out is I am worn out.
Did you ever see a branding before, Mr. Delahanty?
No, this is my first.
Chad, for mercy's sake, will you stop conversing and toss that calf? The iron is red hot.
Okay, Cherokee. And don't forget the instructions I gave you.
Yes, sir. Once over lightly.
Okay. All right, here we go. All right, Cherokee. Slap on that branding iron. Because once we get this one done, we still got 99 more ahead that are going to wear the triangle cross. Now, believe me, it was mighty tough work branding 100 steers. But well worth the money Delahanty was supposed to pay us. It was late and dark by the time we'd finished, so we arranged to have Delahanty come back the next morning to cut out his cattle and drive them over to his own acres. But just before Delahanty was due, Cherokee and I paid another call on Dixie Baldwin.
Are you crazy? Why should I go out to the corral while you gloat over delivering 100 head of stolen cattle to Delahanty?
Now, look, young lady. You're coming out to witness the delivery whether you want to or not. So make up your mind to that.
Who do you think you're talking to that way?
I know who I'm talking to. Miss Dixie Baldwin. She's going out to make sure that Delahanty gets only the cattle wearing his own brand.
You can talk all you want to. I'm not going out to the corral.
Now, the heck you're not, young lady.
Will she or won't she? March 13th, 1953, Frontier Town. The conclusion next on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. But first, these messages. So here's the choice. Some people say the USA is finished. It's evil, a has-been, full of hate and injustice. The U.S. Constitution should be trashed and the Bill of Rights abolished. No free speech, no gun ownership. Competition and free markets are bad. We're all too stupid. For our own good, the government must own everything and know all your secrets.
Other people say that America has created the freest, richest, happiest, most generous society that has ever existed in the world. That's why millions of people are desperate to come here and escape their brutal lives in Cuba, Venezuela, North Korea, and 100 other countries.
In America, we have the right to succeed, the right to our own living, the right to have a family, the right to believe in God, the right to have our own ideas, the right to be safe and secure, and the right to be left alone.
Where do you stand? Help us save the Constitution and restore the American dream. Go to SaveMyFreedom.com.
Brought to you by the American Media Council.
Now on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, the conclusion of Frontier Town, March 13th, 1953.
Cherokee, grab her shoulders.
Delighted, my boy.
Now, we're carrying Miss Baldwin to the corral ourselves.
Here goes.
Put me down. No, you stop it. You put me down. No, you leave me alone.
Well, Mr. Delahanty, it's up to you to pick out the cattle wearing your Triangle Cross brand and drive them out of here.
Huh? Triangle Cross brand?
That's your brand, you know.
Why, not one of these cattle are wearing a Triangle Cross.
But they're the same cattle you saw Chad and I brand for you yesterday.
What are you talking about?
Not your cattle. These have got to be your cattle. You left that so-called assistant of yours here to watch them overnight, didn't you?
We're not magicians, Mr. Delahanty.
I don't know what's going on. There must be some mistake.
Mistake? Oh, there can't possibly be. And what's more, you yourself gave Miss Baldwin a receipt for the 100 head of cattle right after the branding.
Yeah, but these aren't my cattle.
Well, I must admit the 100 head penned up in here are wearing the 2-Bar-S brand. Maybe you moved your cattle during the night while we weren't around.
You think I'm crazy or something?
I'm sure I don't know. But since you admit these aren't your cattle here, well, you might just as well be on your way.
Why, you... Remington, I don't know how you did it, but you tricked me.
I did?
And let me tell you this much. You're not going to get away with it.
But maybe I have gotten away with it, Delahanty. It seems to me that you've already signed a receipt for the delivery of your so-called cattle.
Yeah? I'm taking the cattle in this corral anyhow. Right.
Yeah, boy?
Start driving that 100 head out of here.
My good man, do you Intimate that you're going to rustle Miss Baldwin's cattle?
I mean that you're both a couple of thieves. And I'm taking what's rightly mine.
Delahanty, you just made a couple of mistakes. The first mistake was calling me a thief. And the second was...
Chad, look out! Go get him, Counselor!
Try to steal cattle, will you?
Remington, you're nothing but a filthy crook,
And that's one sentence you're not going to finish. When you wake up, we've got another sentence you can finish, which will run about 15 years.
All right, Sheriff, you can come out of those bushes now.
All right, come on, Sheriff. You saw Delahanty try to take 100 head of cattle that weren't wearing his brand. And I know that you know exactly what to do with cattle rustlers.
Chad, I'm not even going to apologize to you for all I said and did.
You sure don't have to, Dixie.
But will you please explain to me how you got away with that hocus pocus when I saw you brand the cattle with Delahanty's brand myself?
Miss, all we did was cold brand that stock.
Huh? Cold brand? Now, just what is a cold brand?
Well, Dixie, I tried to explain it to you yesterday, but you just wouldn't listen. However, a cold brand is a brand which only burns the hair off, doesn't touch the hide. And Delahanty, being an Easterner, didn't know that this time of the year, with the cattle shedding their hair, the burned hair fell out overnight, leaving only the 2-bar S to show through.
And the look on his face when he saw that 2-bar S.
Well, that 2-bar is a wonderful brand. Just imagine, 2 bars in place of 1.
What do you mean, Cherokee?
Well, Cherokee's kind of hinting that now that the job's all over and Delahanty's on his way to jail, he'd like a little liquid refreshment.
Oh, well, come on. I've got a bottle of something in the kitchen.
Oh, no, not that.
Oh, what's the matter, Cherokee? You turning down a drink?
Well, last night I got into the kitchen and brought the bottle out. Started to pour a drink in the parlor, but I very quickly gave it up. Too strong for me.
Too strong? Oh, you'll have to explain that one to me.
Well, when I poured some in the glass, a few drops of it fell on the maple table in the parlor.
Yes?
And that liquor was so strong, you know what? The bird's eye maple all turned bloodshot.
Frontier Town, starring Reed Hadley and featuring Wade Crosby, is a Bruce Ells production. Story and direction by Paul Franklin. Music written and played by Ivan Ditmars. Be sure to be with us again same time next week for another fine action-adventure story with your favorite young Western star, Reed Hadley. And now this is Bill Foreman to tell you that Frontier Town comes to you from Hollywood.
Never mind that Reed Hadley had been doing westerns for over a decade at this point. He's still that young star. Frontier Town, March 13th, 1953 on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox.
Are you suffering with arthritis or osteoporosis? Do you have diabetes? Did you know that these are just 2 of the hundreds of diseases that have seen improvement with Dr. Wallach's incredible longevity products? You can't get them at a health food store. The only way to get them is to call us at 800-214-0065. That's 800-214-0065. Do you have heart disease, fibromyalgia, or high blood pressure? Do you have a terrible time losing weight? Dr. Wallach can help. He was a veterinarian and cured diseases in animals. He felt that he could do the same for humans, so he became a physician. Over 50 years of research and helping people like you goes into every bottle of Dr. Wallach's amazing discoveries. Do you want to feel better? Learn how to treat the cause of your problem rather than covering up the symptoms with drugs. Call 800-214-0065. That's 800-214-0065.
Now on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, Part 2 of the 5-part Yours Truly Johnny Dollar story, The Clinton Matter. This episode originally broadcast March 13th, 1956.
From Hollywood, it's time now for...
Johnny Dollar.
David Baines.
Hi. How's it going this morning?
I'm staying off the streets. I don't want to be beat up again. I'd advise you to do the same.
I can't very well do that. The city of Clinton has filed claim for their school building. I have to make an investigation.
You're bucking a rough crowd, Mr. Dollar. Wait till you meet 'em all.
I intend to.
I admire you, but I think you're foolish. Good luck.
Just a minute.
What?
Not only did a school building burn down yesterday, but a man died in that fire. If there was something wrong with it, I want to get to the bottom of it. I expect help from you, too.
I'll stay here until I hear from you. Tonight, and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to United Adjustment Bureau, 418 West 61st Street, New York City. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Clinton matter. That's Clinton, Colorado. Expense account item 5, 80 cents, telegram to Dodd and Company, Denver insurance brokers, who would handle the policies covering the new school building in Clinton. I requested them to forward copies of the policies. Item 6, 10 cents, one copy of the Clinton Times and the full story on the fire. It was believed by Fire Chief Hadley that the fire had started because of overheated boilers in the heating system.
Dollar, is it?
Yeah, that's right. I'm an insurance investigator.
Yep. Well, what can I do for you?
Tell me about the fire yesterday.
You sound like you're carrying a chip on your shoulder, Mr. Dollar.
We had word that building irregularities were suspected in that school, Chief. The word came from the janitor, Julian Osborne. He burned to death in that fire yesterday, and the building's gone now.
You get as head up as you want to, boy. I got my own troubles. I'll tell you what we think, and you can take it, whether you like it or not. We think old Julian Osborne might have passed out, got drunk, or had a heart attack in that building. We think something like that happened, and the boilers kept right on going and built up the pressure. We think the boilers exploded, the fire started, and that was that.
And why do you think the whole place went down?
Because it spread so fast.
Why did it spread?
I didn't build the building. I just took care of the fire. You're going to have to change your attitude around here if you want anybody to cooperate with you.
All right, then tell me this. Why, on a day when school wasn't in session, would those boilers be fired up at all?
I don't know.
Chief, last night I talked to Sheriff Doherty, trying to get information about Julian Osborne. He didn't know anything either. I also talked to Florrie Hawkins, the school principal. She didn't know. Now you don't know anything. Who does?
I've done my job, boy. I've determined cause.
You've also given me a chance to look at you, which was about the only reason I came here. I'll get information elsewhere, Chief. There's some people in this town who want to talk and tell me things. You and your sheriff and whoever else is involved can't keep every mouth in this town shut. And I'll tell you like I told Miss Hawkins. I'm at the Northern Hotel, in case you remember anything.
I can't hear you, boy. Not one word.
Expense account item 7, $1.80, breakfast in the coffee shop of my hotel for myself and David Baines, who still looked badly battered from the beating he'd taken the night before.
You're taking a chance sitting here with me. Hope you realize that.
Am I?
I'm public enemy number 1 in this town. I'm the man who built the school that didn't stay up.
Look, Baines, I want you to tell me all about it. If you have any information or knowledge that would be helpful in this investigation, then you better give out with it right now.
What specifically do you want to know?
First, the town.
You know what this place is? It's a backyard. And only the rich kids can play here. Vickery, Hanley, Doherty, those are the rich kids, Mr. Dollar. The rest of us are, well, we live across the tracks.
Let's start with Vickery.
He's a builder. Not only here, all over these mountains. Grand Junction, Rifle Mesa, all over. He's got $1 million and a million angles. He's the one who sent me to Europe to study for a year after I completed my plans for the new building. Got me out of the way.
Okay. Fire Chief Hadley.
A friend of Vickery's. And any friend of Vickery's is going to get rich, one way or another.
Sheriff Doherty.
He keeps the law orderly for Vickery. Very necessary.
Okay, then. The fire itself. Chief Hanley says the school boilers blew up and caused the fire.
There was no reason for those boilers to be fired up. No reason. If they were fired to blow up. They had automatic shut-off equipment.
What about Julian Osborne?
You say he notified the broker in Denver that something was wrong with the building, and that's how you got here. I don't know. They might have fired it for money, too. I told you I was in Europe until they constructed it. I got back in Clinton 4 days ago. I went over to see my building. They used my outside drawing, Dollar. Wooden beams where I indicated steel girders. Only half the plumbing and heating system, other things. It looked like they'd made it up as they went along.
Did you talk to anybody about it?
Oh, sure. The contractor.
Vickery.
He told me to keep my mouth shut and be a good boy.
Do you think he got you out of town during the construction so you wouldn't interfere?
I think so. I'm not important, but it was the easiest way. I understand Mr. Vickery's a little unpopular today.
What?
A delegation went out to his house to hang him or something.
Baines was partially right. A delegation had gone out to see Roy Vickery in his polished pine domain at the end of town. They were still there when I drove up in my rented car. 20 or 30 irate citizens demanding an explanation for the lost school. 10 uniformed men from Sheriff Doherty's office formed a half-moon circle in front of the main entrance, their holsters unbuckled. The sheriff himself was directing the operation.
All right, just a minute there.
Hello, Sheriff.
Huh?
Johnny Dollar. I talked to you last night.
Oh, yeah. Chief Hadley called me about you.
The chief called you, and last night you called Florrie Hawkins. That was nice. Keep the wires burning.
Chief said you came over to see him. Used abusive language. Tried to cause trouble.
The chief was mistaken. I wasn't trying to cause trouble, Sheriff. There's enough of that in this town. I was just trying to find out how the fire started yesterday.
The chief told you how it started.
I didn't believe him. Now, what do you think of that?
You better watch your step around here, Mr. Dollar. You seem to be looking for arguments all the time.
Not at all, Sheriff. I'm misunderstood.
We understand you all right.
How's Mr. Vickery?
He's all right, and he's going to stay all right.
I'm sure he will. But these people don't like their school burning down. It's expensive. Also, their kids could have been in it. I want to see Mr. Vickery about that.
He isn't seeing anyone, Mr. Dollar. And we aren't letting anybody in to see him.
Really? Did any of you people hear that?
Now, look here.
Hey, listen, folks. Listen to me, will you? Look. Now, listen. I'm an insurance investigator. I'm worried about what happened to your school yesterday.
Keep quiet.
They tell me Mr. Vickery built that school. The architect who designed it said it wasn't built to his specifications. Now, I want to go in and ask Mr. Vickery about that. The sheriff here doesn't want me to do that.
I'll get you for this, Dollar.
Wait a minute. The sheriff just said I'll get you for this. All right, hold it. Hold it, please. Please, now listen to me. Listen.
Yeah, sure.
I'll put it to the sheriff again so you can all hear. Sheriff, I want to go in and see Mr. Vickery on business. Well?
Go ahead.
Thank you. At a direction from Sheriff Doherty, the wedge of deputies opened up long enough for me to walk through the wrought iron gate and up the steps to the Vickery mansion. A tall man in a white jacket answered the door and ushered me into a den that was stocked with good liquor and big leather chairs. Finally, a big man in a blue suit walked in. He had lots of good teeth, and there wasn't an ounce of fat on his 230 pounds.
I'm Roy Vickery. It was quite an act with Sheriff Doherty just now. I watched you from upstairs.
That's a good, safe place to watch from, Mr. Vickery.
Now that you're in, what can I do for you?
Tell me everything you can about that school building.
Mm-hmm. Has the city of Clinton made a claim yet?
Yes, $200,000, building and contents.
You got in town pretty fast.
We heard there might be something wrong with that building before the fire. Apparently there was.
Now, who told you a thing like that?
Julian Osborne. He's dead now, you know.
Oh? Well, 2 boilers explode, and there's something wrong with the building. Is that the way you people figure?
Yeah.
Well, so do we, and we couldn't find anything wrong.
Who's we?
Officially, we're the Civic Construction Department. We just had a meeting. We thought we ought to.
Yeah. I figure those people hanging around outside should be worrying.
Well, they don't worry me, and you don't worry me. A drunken janitor goes to sleep and lets the boilers kick up, and the joint blows apart and burns down. That's what we decided in the meeting. It was a terrible accident. We'll have to use an old garage or something for a school, but then we'll get around to building another school with the insurance money we have coming.
And that's that?
That's that.
Mr. Vickery, I'd like a copy of the specifications that went into that building.
Sure, anything at all. There you are. Okay?
That'll do for now.
Good. Now, you can get out of my house, Dollar. You smell smoky.
There were 50 pages of specifications on the building materials used in the construction of that school. They looked all right. They also looked as though they could have been forgeries. Expense account item 8, $6. 1 bottle of whiskey for David Baines and myself in my hotel room. Baines went over the specifications page by page. Okay, what do you think?
These are my specifications, more or less.
This is what's on paper that went into the building. How about what actually went into it?
Well, the little I saw, they cut corners everywhere. The outside was just a shell of this stuff.
You sure?
These are my notes. I can remember this much.
Can you remember it in front of a notary? I want a sworn statement.
I don't know.
You what?
Well, don't look at me that way. You can get my statement and possibly a half a dozen other statements. On paper, you'd have a case. Then what would you do? Go to the district attorney? We haven't got a district attorney. We got a county attorney who's elected for a 4-year term.
All right, I'll go to him.
Vickery?
Then I'll go to somebody else, the insurance commission.
You try to go any farther, they'll kill you, Dollar.
Well, let me worry about that. Now, will you make a statement?
Sorry. That'd kill me, too.
And that's the way matters stood in Clinton, Colorado, 24 hours after their new school building had burned down and a man had died in the flames. Everyone seemed to know it was all wrong, but no one was willing to do anything about it. Johnny Dollar.
Hello, Dollar. Roy Vickery.
Wow.
You go over those specifications?
Yes, I did. Very thoroughly.
Well?
I think they're fakes, Mr. Vickery.
I didn't ask you your opinion, Dollar.
But you've got it.
Well, I'm sure you're entitled to it. When are you leaving town?
Not for a while.
I was kind of hoping you'd be leaving like in about an hour. You'd make good connections then.
Sorry. I haven't really gotten around as much as I want to yet.
You saw me. I can tell you anything.
Well, I'll get around to you again.
Get out of town, Dollar. Now.
Vickery, there are times when I don't hear good.
Now, here's our star to tell you about tomorrow's intriguing episode of this week's story.
Tomorrow, a lady who promised to love, honor, and obey a building inspector, but wound up a widow. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by John Dawson, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Be sure to join us tomorrow night, same time and station, for the next exciting episode of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking.
This sounds like this could be trouble. From March 13th, 1956, yours truly, Johnny Dollar, on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Visit my webpage, classicradio.stream. You can stream our shows on demand, learn more about classic radio collecting, and contact me there, classicradio.stream. And if you miss a day on this radio station, you do not have to miss a single show. You can always find our shows on demand through iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, or Amazon. Just search for Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. That's Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. And please thank this radio station and support their advertisers. It is their kindness and courtesy that allows our program to be with you each and every time we're here. And also tell your friends, great radio shows are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite radio station.